Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. I traveled to London last month for a short weekend trip, and I want to take you along with me to the National Gallery and also show you a few things that I got from Jackson's. So we arrived in the afternoon of a Thursday. We stayed at Greenwich, which is really nice. There are a few tourist attractions here, but in general it feels very local, and I love their little market here. I had a lot of fun flipping through their vintage art books here, and some artist was even painting in his stall in the market, which was very fun to watch. We tried some English food that night and took a long walk by the water to look at Karisark and the sunset. The next day, I went to the National Gallery. I spent a few hours here. It was really amazing to look at all these beautiful masterpieces. I have seen many of these paintings in art books or online, but it's impossible to get the sense of scale unless I'm right there in front of these paintings. And it's such a pleasure to look at all the close-ups and details in person. It was really amazing. And I was really happy to see many lesser-known pieces from famous painters like Monet. It shows that they put in a lot of thoughts and effort into these works as well, and it was really lovely to discover them. There were a lot of religious paintings. I didn't grow up with this type of culture, so I'm still learning how to appreciate it. But for now, I don't quite understand the meanings behind each scene, but I love looking at the composition and also the shockingly impressive anatomy. And two elements that I really enjoyed to look at were clothing folds and hands. I guess it's because these are something that I haven't quite learned how to draw or paint. So looking at them at this level is just magical. They can be so intricate but also so effortless. I really couldn't help but get lost staring at them, trying to imagine how the painter planned the brushstrokes. But since I have very limited knowledge when it comes to oil painting, I wasn't able to imagine very far, so to speak, because I really have no idea how anything works with oil painting. But this has sparked a lot of curiosity in me. I really felt the urge to learn about oil painting. One of the paintings that really captured my attention was Man of the Docks by George Bellows. Looking at his brushwork, especially the foreground where the man and horses are in focus, I'm not sure how he applied the paint, but it almost looks like buttercream icing on a cake made yesterday. It's so shiny and fresh in the foreground, while in the background it looks much more flatter and almost murky looking. I love this contrast so much. I stood there for many minutes just trying to really look at each section of the painting in close-up. Again, I don't know much about oil painting to tell how was this painted, what kind of brush, or was it palette knife that he used. I have no idea, but I loved it so much. This was kind of a surprise. This is not the type of subject matter that I'm usually attracted to, and especially the color palette. It's more on the gloomy side. I usually prefer more colorful, sunnier type of painting. Or at least I thought so, but there's something about this painting that is so striking to me. Maybe because it's the texture or the stark black and white paints right next to each other. Maybe it's something else, I'm not quite sure yet, but the whole experience made me so excited to learn about oil painting. After that, we had some lunch and visited one of the Jackson store. It was one of the smaller shops in London because we didn't want to commute to the other one. In hindsight, I think I should have made an order on Jackson's website and pick it up there, but I'm really bad at planning things in advance, so I was kind of hoping that they had more hand-painted charts for brands like Roman Szmal and Michael Harding's watercolor so that I can choose when I'm there. But this shop didn't even carry watercolor from these two brands, so I just bought some paper and some Sennelier's paint and ordered the other items on their website. This shop is in walking distance to Fulham Palace. It reminds me of Downton Abbey a little bit. The walk was really, really beautiful and we were so lucky with the weather. So we went there, had a cup of tea, and it was a lovely time. And I just have to say, scones and clotted cream, they are so underrated. I can't believe there is something even more delicious than butter, and I never tried it until now. Like, why is it not everywhere? The next day we went to look at the Maritime Museum and the Queen's House. I spent a few hours here looking around. Again, it's such a different experience compared to looking at artworks through a screen. And for some reason, I felt so small and uncultured in a way because I realized how little I know about history in general. I used to hate history class. It was always about war and never about how people lived, the food they ate, and the way they raised their children. And it's not because I didn't grow up with English culture. I think I might know even less about Chinese history because how it was taught in school. There were no Chinese equivalent books like Jane Eyre or Pride and Prejudice that sparked my interest for a certain period of time. So it was extremely difficult for me to relate and care about it. So during this trip, I felt my interest for art history kind of expanded to history in general. I actually started putting together a timeline of my favorite artworks and music pieces throughout history in chronological order, because I want to have an overview of how everything happened. It might not sound like it, but I promise you it's actually a really fun pastime for me. I learned so much doing this, but that's probably for a different video to discuss. London has always had a very special place in my heart. My grandparents lived here for 7 years when I was a little girl. My grandpa was working for Air China back then, and our family couldn't afford to visit them. But my grandparents very often asked the pilots to bring back food and toys for us. While we were still living in planned economy, we still had to buy flowers with these coupons. But at the same time, we also had pizza and baked beans and Nutella from London. So it was an interesting time to live in. And London feels almost nostalgic to me, even if this is the first time I'm visiting here. And soon it was time to go home. I had a lovely time and felt very charged with creative energy. I did have to wait for a while before my Jackson's order arrived. I got 12 colors from 3 different brands, from szmal, Sennelier, and Michael Harding. You might have noticed that they are all watercolors made with some honey in the binder. I am in the process of building a palette to use in the wintertime because my regular paints from Winsor Newton, Daniel Smith, those paints are made with gum arabic and they can be a bit too dry for the Swedish winter. So I wanted to try a few brands that are known to be very easy to reactivate. I mostly chose the colors that I already use quite frequently. I feel like I'm quite happy with my selection of paint right now. And I want that familiarity. So maybe this is a bit underwhelming. I didn't get any exciting duotone or granulating colors. But I'm still very happy with them. I always wanted to try szmal. I heard so much great things about them. It seems to me that they're very reasonably priced and have a very big selection of colors with unique pigments. Although I didn't get any of their Aquarius colors, I was more in the mood for something I know how to use. So I got 6 colors from szmal: perylene scarlet, perylene green, deep green gold, potter's pink, and benzimidazole yellow, which I believe is made with pigment PY154. It's the same pigment as Winsor yellow, which I love to use. I've seen some reviews complaining about their half pans packaging. It looks like they're in the process of replacing the plasticky ones with paper wrappings, which is nice. And I didn't experience much stickiness issues, maybe just a little bit with the yellow one and the perylene green, but it was very minimal. My first impression with these paints is that they are really, really smooth and velvety, really vibrant, and the colors are very on point, like they're exactly what you would expect them to be. The 2 perylene colors I got is almost exactly the same as Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith, same as the PY154. They seem to be very reliable. Maybe that's a boring word to describe, but I didn't choose any very flamboyant colors since that's not what I need right now. And I also swatched Potter's Pink from Daniel Smith for the comparison. Roman szmal is slightly more saturated or a little bit pinker, but the main difference is how they reactivate. Roman szmal feels like it's not as moist and sticky as Amgram's watercolor paints, but it's still much easier to reactivate compared to Daniel Smith. I'm also very happy that they carry a lot of pastel colors, which I use very often. Now moving on to Sennelier. I only tried their Chinese orange before, and it was from a half pan, not from a tube. So I'm quite curious to see if there's any difference in the formula. And their light gray color is so soft and misty. It's the exact color of Swedish winter sky. It's made of ultramarine and black and white. I already love this color, and I can see myself using this quite often throughout this winter. I also got their Naples yellow and raw umber. The last two paints are from Michael Harding. I never tried their paints before, and there aren't a lot of videos about them on YouTube since they are quite new to the watercolor world. And the first color I tried, this deep purple, like, oh my goodness, it needs to calm down. It's so intense. It's really unbelievable how pigmented it was. It could be that I happened to pick up too much paint with my brush, but still, like, this color is something else. And it looks like their Van Dyke Brown also came out of the tube once I opened it. I wasn't squeezing it, so it just came out on its own. So I guess they have a tendency to do that. And this one is more granulating than I expected, but it is still a very beautiful, warm and muted black color. And I almost forgot about titanium white from Sennelier. I guess this is the least interesting color here, but so far I don't have much to say about these paints. I need to squeeze them into pans, let them dry for a few days, and try a few paintings with them before I can form any opinions about them. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.